If you make a low life like you disappear from this world, the billionaire tycoon roared, pointing at me. I calmly dialed a private line. 5 minutes. Make his conglomerate disappear. 3 minutes later. Bankruptcy notices and debt collection calls rang nonstop. The once arrogant man collapsed to his knees at my feet, his face filled with despair. Welcome to my channel. If you love the story, don't forget to subscribe. Listen, Lance. I've had enough of your so-called grassroots training game. On the other end of the phone, my grandfather, the current head of the Castle Group and the man who truly controlled America's largest military-industrial conglomerate, was roaring at me in a voice that could make even Pentagon generals tremble. I'm giving you 1 month. If you still can't bring me back a legal, living, breathing wife, I'll freeze all your hidden accounts immediately and send a Black Hawk helicopter to drag you back to headquarters in New York. And your job as a communications officer at that lousy security company is over. Old man, can you be reasonable for once? I pulled the phone a little farther away and rubbed my brow helplessly. I'm doing quite well at Vanguard Security. I'm only 6 months away from completing the entry-level undercover assignment required by the family. You can't force me to go on a blind date now. I made the rules. The Castle family doesn't need a bachelor heir who can do nothing but pound on a keyboard. The old man didn't listen to my explanation at all. Either bring home a wife by the end of the month, or come back and inherit this damn $100 billion empire immediately. You choose. Beep beep beep. The call was abruptly terminated. I sighed and leaned back in the slightly cheap-looking ergonomic chair in the communications room. My name is Lance Castle. On the surface, I'm a senior tactical communications officer at Vanguard International Security, a salaried employee who clocks in on time every day and occasionally has to put up with abuse. In reality, I'm the sole legal heir to the Castle military-industrial empire. To prove that I'm not just a spoiled rich kid who knows how to spend money, I concealed my tens of billions in assets and signed a 3-year agreement to undergo grassroots field training. More importantly, implanted in my cerebral cortex is the military's most cutting-edge neuronal super-tactical AI, Aegis. This thing can hack into New York City's traffic network in 3 seconds or predict an enemy's ballistic trajectory within 10. But I never imagined that this cheat code life of mine would get stuck at the finding a wife stage. I absolutely cannot go back to inherit the family fortune. Once I do, I'll be faced with endless board meetings, tedious financial statements, and those hypocritical Wall Street politicians every day. I'd rather slack off here. I really had no other choice. I stood up, straightened the slightly wrinkled blue uniform I was wearing, and steeled myself as I headed toward the most intimidating office in the entire company. At the end of the corridor, it was the office of our Chief Executive Commander, Victoria Sterling, at Vanguard Security. Victoria was a legend, a retired Special Forces officer. She was iron-fisted and ruthless, and everyone at the company secretly called her the Winter Queen. She had sleek, dark blonde hair and a tall, striking figure, but a single glance from those piercing blue eyes was enough to make you feel the Siberian chill instantly. I took a deep breath and knocked on the frosted glass door. Come in. A cool, utterly emotionless voice came from inside. I pushed the door open and entered. Victoria was seated behind a large mahogany desk, dressed in an impeccably tailored black business suit. She did not look up, rapidly reviewing a mission report in her hands. Make it quick, Lance. I bill my time by the second, she said coldly, without even lifting her eyes. Ma'am, it's a personal matter. I cleared my throat, doing my best to sound like a helpless working stiff from the bottom of society. My family has been pressuring me really hard to get married lately. They've even threatened to disown me. So, what do you think? Could you access our company's internal HR system or client database and help me find a suitable blind date candidate? The nib of Victoria's pen came to an abrupt halt. The air throughout the office seemed to freeze in that instant. She slowly raised her head, those deep blue eyes fixed intently on me. To be honest, even with Aegis backing me up, I still couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat whenever this woman stared at me. You want me to help you find a wife? Her tone revealed no joy or anger, but the slight lift at the end carried an extremely dangerous edge. I know this is highly irregular. I quickly raised both hands in surrender, but I'm really at the end of my rope. As long as she's a woman, alive, and can help me deal with the old man at home, that's all I need. You have plenty of connections, just slip me anyone's file, and I'll be eternally grateful. I swear, I'll cover every night shift next month. Victoria simply stared at me for a full 10 seconds. There was something strange about her gaze. It wasn't the way one looked at a subordinate. Rather, she resembled an exceptionally patient apex predator that had finally waited for its prey to walk into the cage of its own accord. Suddenly, the corners of her lips lifted in an extremely faint, fleeting curve. Good. She lowered her head again and continued reading the documents. I'll send the information on the suitable candidates directly to your grandfather. Really? Thank you so much, Commander. You're practically my savior. I sighed with relief, feeling as though I'd managed to preserve my precious slacking time. Then I'll get the hell out of here and get to work. I turned around and hurried out of the office, afraid she might change her mind. And in the instant I closed the door, I failed to notice the glint of triumph that flashed through Victoria's eyes. That evening, my bachelor apartment in Manhattan's Hell's Kitchen, I was sprawled on the couch, biting into a slice of cold pepperoni pizza while watching the game on my tablet. Suddenly, an eerie blue warning light began flashing in the lower right corner of my retina. It was the emergency alert from the AI in my brain. Aegis. Beep. High-frequency encrypted data transmission detected. Data source: Victoria Sterling's private military terminal. Destination address: the ultra-confidential private email account of the chairman of the Castle Group's board of directors. I abruptly sat up straight, nearly choking on the pizza in my throat. What's going on? I immediately issued an order to Aegis in my mind. Intercept the data packet and make me a copy to inspect. How does Victoria know the old man's private email address? Cracking in progress. Military-grade encryption bypassed. File extracted. A virtual holographic screen suddenly appeared before my eyes. The moment I saw what was displayed on it, I felt as if I had been struck by 5 bolts of lightning, and I froze completely in place. It was an email addressed to my grandfather. There was no so-called client database list, nor any matchmaking candidates from the HR system. The email attachment contained only an extremely detailed personal resume and a photograph. It was a photograph of Victoria. In the photo, she had none of the cold, ruthless air of the ice-cold commander she was during the day. She wore a burgundy velvet evening gown, its plunging neckline leaving her stunning curves fully on display. Leaning against the bar, she held a martini in one hand, her eyes lazy and seductive, with even a hint of deadly flirtation. The sheer contrast was enough to make any normal American man's blood surge instantly. And beneath the photo and her flawless resume was a single, extremely brief and hard-hitting message. Old Mr. Castle, I'm taking charge of the marriage of your grandson, Lance. Have the betrothal gifts ready. See you next week. Victoria Sterling. What the fuck? I blurted out, unable to stop myself. And the pizza in my hand dropped straight onto the carpet. She knows who I am. She had already investigated me down to the last detail. At work, this woman is always nitpicking me and assigning me the most exhausting tasks. So I thought she just couldn't stand me. But as it turns out, she was secretly observing me, and had even prepared long ago to move up and become the young mistress of a tycoon's family. Besides, is this what she calls helping me find a wife? She freaking packaged herself up and airdropped herself straight into my grandfather's inbox. Shield alert. The target email has been read. Old Mr. Castle replied with a single word. Good. Done. I feel like my head is buzzing. The old man is probably already picking out an engagement ring. The disguise I was so proud of turned out to be as flimsy as paper in front of Victoria. This demon of a woman, one poke, and it fell apart. Early the next morning, I arrived at Pioneer Security Tower with dark circles under my eyes. I had to confront Victoria immediately and find out what she was really after. My future freedom was at stake, and I absolutely could not become this scheming woman's plaything. However, the moment I pushed open the door to the communications command center, I came face to face with a figure I detested beyond measure. It was the company's parachuted-in vice president, Derek Vanderbilt, a spoiled rich kid who threw his family's weight around all over the city. At that moment, he was standing in front of my desk with several security guards, blocking my way with a contemptuous look in his eyes. Hey, isn't this our useless correspondent who only knows how to hide behind a screen? Lance? Derek slammed a cup of coffee down onto my keyboard, splattering brown liquid all over the desk. You're right on time. I just signed the paperwork. You're fired. Now pack up your crap and get out of my sight. Scalding coffee dripped through the gaps in the keyboard, and the dark brown liquid even splashed onto the cheap blue uniform jacket I had just bought at the supermarket yesterday. I stared at the arrogant, insufferable face before me, forcibly suppressing the urge to break his nose with a single punch. Derek Vanderbilt, the newly appointed vice president of our company, Vanguard Security. His father is a moderately well-known logistics tycoon in New York. Recently, in order to give his spoiled son, who spends his days doing nothing but partying and chasing models, something respectable to do, he invested a hefty sum in our company and bought him a cushy management position. From his very first day on the job, he took a dislike to me. The reason was simple. Last week, in the company hallway, he tried to harass a new receptionist, and I interrupted him in an extremely sarcastic tone. Since then, this bullying mad dog had set his sights on me. Mr. Vanderbilt, if I remember correctly, according to the company's standard HR procedures and New York state labor law, you, as executive vice president, do not have the authority to bypass my direct supervisor and fire me. I leaned back in my chair, pulled out a few tissues, and calmly wiped the coffee stains off my keyboard without even looking up. My composure clearly enraged Derek. He suddenly slammed his palm down on my desk, sending the pen holder beside it crashing to the floor. Rules? You're a bottom-feeding rat making minimum wage and barely able to pay your rent, and you're talking to me about rules? Derek laughed arrogantly. He pointed at the several burly security guards behind him. In this company, my father's check is the rule. If I say you're garbage, then you're garbage. The data transmission for that important client was delayed by a full 5 seconds yesterday. That's gross negligence on your part. Now pack up your junk and get back to your slum. Immediately. All the colleagues around us kept their heads down, staring intently at their computer screens. Not one of them dared to say a word. That was the reality of the workplace. No one would offend a powerful, wealthy trust fund kid for some low-level communications clerk with no connections. In fact, the so-called data latency was entirely caused by Derek's decision to switch to a cheap bandwidth provider in a desperate effort to cut the company's server costs. But he clearly intended to pin the blame squarely on me and use it as an excuse to fire me. However, he had picked the wrong target. I took a deep breath in my mind and issued a command directly to the supersystem concealed within my neurons. Aegis, pull up every detail on this idiot and his family business. The more detailed, the better. The deep blue glow in the lower right corner of my retina flickered faintly. In less than 3 seconds, an enormous stream of data unfolded in my mind. Instruction received. Scanning the Vanderbilt family's logistics network. Analysis complete. The target family business currently has a debt ratio as high as 85%, with a serious risk of a liquidity crisis. Its 3 major transfer warehouses in New Jersey are suspected of having long provided cover for local gang smuggling of controlled drugs. With tens of millions of dollars in fictitious transactions on the books, Derek Vanderbilt himself has 3 properties under mortgage, lost $2 million in Las Vegas just last month, and is currently facing collection efforts from private loan sharks. Looking at the top-secret information before me, I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. My grandfather used to say that if the Castle family wanted to crush a so-called tycoon of this caliber, they wouldn't even need to lift a finger. All it would take was a casual mention at a Wall Street morning meeting, and the company would vanish into thin air before the market closed that afternoon. When Derek saw me staring at the screen in silence, with even the faintest hint of a smile on my lips, he flew into a rage. He thought I had been scared senseless. He pulled a checkbook from the pocket of his expensive custom-tailored suit, scrawled a figure across it, and then tossed it directly at my face in an utterly humiliating gesture. The weightless slip of paper slid down the bridge of my nose and fell onto the coffee-stained tabletop. 2,000. Consider it severance pay, a handout for a broke loser like you. Take it and buy yourself some cheap beer to mourn your failed life. Derek turned toward the security guards, his tone turning vicious. You 3, help him throw his things out. If he dares resist, teach him how to behave in this society. The 2 security guards exchanged glances. Though they looked uneasy, they still steeled themselves and walked toward me. One of them had already reached out and grabbed my shoulder. My gaze instantly turned cold. Just as I was preparing to disable Aegis's stealth mode and give these 2 clueless idiots a physical lesson they would never forget, the tightly closed door to the communications command center was suddenly pushed open, with a muffled bang, accompanied by the highly oppressive sound of high heels striking the floor. The office, which had been somewhat noisy because of Derek's outburst, fell into a deathly silence. It was as if the temperature around us had suddenly dropped by 10 degrees. I didn't look back, but I knew who had arrived. There was only one person in the entire company who could command that kind of presence. Victoria Sterling. Today, she was wearing a dark gray haute couture business suit, its impeccable tailoring perfectly accentuating her powerful and alluring figure. Her dark golden hair was tied high in a ponytail, and her deep blue eyes radiated undisguised, icy murderous intent. She was like a queen emerging from the frozen wastes of the far north, advancing toward my workstation with an oppressive presence capable of freezing everything in its path. The security guard gripping my shoulder abruptly snatched his hand back as if electrocuted, then stumbled back 3 steps, not even daring to look her in the eye. The arrogant look on Derek's face instantly twisted into a nauseatingly obsequious smile the moment he saw Victoria. Rubbing his hands together, he hurried forward. Oh, good morning, Commander Sterling. What brings you personally to a grassroots office like this? The air here is terrible. I'm just helping the company get rid of a piece of trash who's slacking off. I'll be finished in no time, and it absolutely won't interfere with your shut up. Victoria did not even look Derek in the eye. She merely spat out the 2 words coldly. Her voice was not loud, but it carried an unquestionable authority that stopped the rest of Derek's sentence dead in his throat. She walked over to my desk, her gaze sweeping across the mess, the keyboard drenched in coffee, the pen holder lying on the floor, and the 2,000 yuan check stained with grime. Finally, her eyes settled on my slightly disheveled jacket. The scene that followed not only left Derek utterly dumbfounded, but also made all the colleagues present who had perked up their ears to eavesdrop suck in a sharp breath. Victoria actually pulled a finely textured white silk handkerchief from her pocket. She bent slightly at the waist, and the faint scent of gunpowder mingled with the refreshing fragrance of cedarwood on her instantly entered my nostrils. She reached out and, with remarkably gentle movements, so careful they were almost unbelievable, helped me wipe away the coffee stain on the collar of my coat. Bit by bit. Is this how you take care of yourself? You can't even dodge a cup of coffee. How are you going to stay by my side in the future? She complained softly, lowering her voice to a volume only the 2 of us could hear. Her tone carried an indescribable intimacy and reproach. My entire body went rigid, and my mind went blank for a brief moment. What exactly was this woman trying to pull? She'd sent photos last night to flirt with my grandfather. And now she was wiping my clothes in front of everyone this morning? Was she really not even trying to hide her intentions anymore? Commander, what are you doing? Derek's face flushed crimson. His eyes filled with disbelief and jealousy. It was practically an open secret around the company that he had been trying to pursue Victoria. But she had never even spared him a proper glance. And now, the ice-cold goddess of his dreams was actually wiping dirt off the clothes of a low-ranking communications officer. Victoria casually tossed the soiled handkerchief onto the desk and finally turned around to face Derek. In that instant, all the warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a sharpness so fierce it was suffocating. What am I doing, Vanderbilt? That's a question I should be asking you. Victoria advanced on Derek step by step. Even when facing a grown man, her tall, long-legged frame showed no hint of retreat. Instead, she completely overwhelmed him with her presence. Lance is a special-grade communications officer whom I personally authorized. His evaluation score ranks first in the entire East Coast Division. You just accused him of shirking his duties? Who gave you the nerve to lay a hand on one of my people in my command center? One of your people? Derek's expression twisted completely. Sterling, don't forget. My father is the company's largest investor. I represent the interests of the board of directors. That loser caused a delay in the client data yesterday. That data latency was caused by you forcing a switch to a cheap server route. I've already copied the board of directors on the relevant technical report and the approval document bearing your signature. If you refuse to accept that, you can call your father right now. Victoria cut him off mercilessly. Then she made an even more extreme move. She turned around and actually hooked her arm through mine. Those slender hands, normally capable of crushing an enemy's throat with ease, were now clutching my arm tightly, as though proclaiming her ownership. Listen carefully, Derek. Victoria's voice echoed through the deathly silent office. Every word like a nail driven firmly into Derek's pride. Lance isn't just the subordinate I value most, he's also my fiancé. You splashed coffee on him today and humiliated him with that ridiculous check. You were slapping me in the face. The moment she said this, it was as though a silent shockwave had exploded across the entire office. I could feel countless stunned gazes converging frantically on us. Fiancé? Fiancé? Derek's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Pointing at me, his finger trembling, he shouted, "This penniless nobody? Have you lost your mind? Looks like your ears are just as useless as your intelligence." Victoria let out a cold laugh. She extended her long leg in its black high heel and violently kicked a nearby office chair, sending it flying. The chair slammed into the wall with a deafening crash, making Derek flinch all over. "Take your security guards and get out of my sight. If you dare set foot on this floor again, or utter another disrespectful word to Lance, I guarantee that not only will you be carried out of here, but that pathetic little fortune your father is so proud of will be buried alongside you." Derek's face was as pale as paper, gritting his teeth. He glared viciously at Victoria and me. He knew all too well about Victoria's background in special operations, as well as her iron-fisted methods in the security industry. Though he was seething with resentment, under the pressure of her overwhelming presence, he could only retreat like a defeated rooster. "Just you wait, Sterling. And you too, Lance. This isn't over." Derek spat out the same tired threat before slinking out of the office with the security guards. The crisis was averted, and the others in the office hurriedly lowered their heads, pretending to work furiously. I took a deep breath and was just about to pull my arm out of Victoria's embrace and demand to know what kind of trick she was playing, but instead of letting go, she pressed even closer to me. That alluring, clean cedar scent enveloped me once again. She rose slightly onto her toes, her rosy lips almost brushing my ear. "Nice cooperation, future head of the Castle family." With a soft chuckle, she spoke in an extremely low voice, so quietly that only I could hear her. "Dress formally tonight and accompany me to the annual charity gala for the nationwide security industry. Also, thank Grandpa for me. I really liked the diamond necklace he had delivered to my apartment this morning." I whipped my head around and stared into her blue eyes, brimming with sly amusement, while 1,000 alpacas stampeded through my mind. That woman had absolutely done it on purpose. Victoria's teasing, like a demon's whisper, exploded in my mind like a depth charge. Before I could recover from the shock, she naturally released my arm, turned to face the coworkers across the office whose jaws had nearly hit the floor, and resumed her bone-chillingly icy expression. "Listen up, everyone. If I see even a single word about what happened this morning on the company's internal forum or in any gossip group, not only will the person who posted be punished, but the entire department's quarterly bonuses will be cancelled. Now, get back to work." She coldly dropped that remark, then gave me a glance that only I could understand. Turning on her heels, she walked into her private elevator without looking back. The communications command center remained utterly silent for a full 3 minutes before the sound of keyboards gradually resumed. However, the way everyone looked at me had changed from their earlier pity and contempt to an exceedingly complicated mix of awe and envy. I paid no attention to the gazes around me and went straight back to my workstation. At that moment, my heart was far from as calm as I appeared on the surface. Shield. Immediately conduct a full-spectrum counter-surveillance scan. Find out exactly how much Victoria knows about me. I issued the highest priority command to the system in my mind. A deep blue glow in the lower right corner of my retina flickered rapidly, scanning the target individual's information interaction records. System alert. The target individual has repeatedly accessed your pre-employment medical examination report and tactical shooting training footage, and cross-referenced them with the physiological metrics of special operations personnel in the military database. In addition, last night the target individual successfully bypassed the outer firewall of the Castle Group and intercepted your grandfather's private itinerary. Upon hearing the system's report, I couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath. This woman was an absolute lunatic, and an undeniable genius at the same time. By following the trail of the muscle memory I tried desperately to conceal during daily training, yet still unwittingly revealed, she had actually traced it all the way to my true identity. Even more terrifyingly, she hadn't gone to report me to the higher-ups, nor had she used this information to blackmail me. Instead, with astonishing decisiveness, and in a manner tantamount to forcing a marriage, she had bypassed me entirely and directly offered her pledge of allegiance to my billionaire grandfather, who was desperate to hold a great-grandchild. What is this supposed to be? A shocking reversal of the hunter and the hunted? I rubbed my slightly throbbing temples, trying to figure out how to deal with tonight's so-called annual industry charity gala, when the glass doors to the office area were pushed open once again. This time, it wasn't a group of company executives who entered, but a group of people dressed in matching black uniforms and wearing white gloves. Leading them was an elegant, old-school European tailor with graying hair. 4 assistants followed behind him, each carefully carrying a garment bag. "May I ask which of you is Mr. Lance?" the elderly tailor asked in English with a strong Italian accent, politely surveying the room. I furrowed my brow and stood up. "I am." The old tailor's eyes lit up. He immediately led his assistants briskly over to me and gave a deeply respectful bow. "Good day, Mr. Lance. I'm the head tailor at Savile Row Bespoke. Commander Sterling placed an urgent order an hour ago for 3 hand-tailored evening suits in different styles for your dinner tonight. Please proceed to the VIP lounge. We need to make the final adjustments to your measurements." As soon as he said this, the entire office area fell silent once again. If everyone had thought Victoria's earlier announcement that I was her fiancé was merely an act to provoke Derek, then the arrival of New York's most prestigious private tailor, personally delivering costly bespoke suits, completely confirmed the rumor. Oh my God! Those are hand-tailored Savile Row bespoke suits. They start at $50,000 each. The portly programmer at the workstation beside mine couldn't help swallowing hard as he muttered under his breath. Did the Winter Queen really take a communications officer as her kept man? And she's willing to spend that much on him? Another female colleague covered her mouth, her eyes filled with disbelief. Listening to the whispers around me, I felt a surge of helplessness. The sole heir to the mighty Castle Military Industries empire, a super billionaire worth tens of billions, was now being regarded by everyone in his own subsidiary as nothing more than a pretty boy living off a rich woman. Still, I couldn't be bothered to explain. The old man had already received the photos, and he was probably grinning from ear to ear by now. Looking at the old tailor's obsequious smile, I curled my lips into a playful smile. Since Victoria wanted to put on this domineering female CEO doting on her pretty boy act, I'd play along with her to the very end. It wasn't like I had to pay out of my own pocket anyway. Lead the way. I casually tossed the coffee-stained, tattered coat into the trash can and followed the tailor calmly toward the VIP room. Meanwhile, inside a top-tier private club on Manhattan's Upper East Side, bang! A crystal tumbler worth several $1,000s was hurled violently against the wall, shattering instantly into countless glittering shards. Expensive whiskey streamed down the ornate wallpaper, leaving behind a glaring stain. Derek Vanderbilt's eyes were bloodshot, and he paced back and forth in the luxurious private room like a beast driven into a frenzy. His cherished bespoke suit had been pulled into a wrinkled mess, and his tie lay carelessly tossed on the carpet. "Bitch! Stinking slut! How dare you pretend to be some pure and chaste saint while secretly fooling around with a bottom-feeding loser who can't even afford a meal?" Derek cursed through clenched teeth, slamming his fist hard into the leather sofa. The 2 bodyguards standing in the corner of the private room kept their heads lowered, not daring to make a sound. What had happened at the company that morning was, to Derek, a supreme humiliation. Spoiled from childhood, he had always believed that any woman he set his sights on could be won over with money. Yet Victoria had not only rejected him in public, she had even trampled all over his dignity in the most humiliating way imaginable. All for the sake of a low-level employee. What frightened him most was Victoria's final warning. He knew all too well about the Sterling family's connections within the military. If Victoria was truly determined to move against his family's business, their shady smuggling operation would not last a week. No, I absolutely refused to swallow this humiliation. I can't touch Victoria. But can I still kill that bastard named Lance? Derek abruptly stopped, a vicious, icy glint flashing in his eyes. He snatched up the encrypted satellite phone on the desk and skillfully dialed a number in New Jersey. After the phone rang 3 times, it was answered. A hoarse voice, thick with the stench of blood, came from the other end. Young Master Vanderbilt. What brings you to me today? I've already delivered last month's shipment safely to the docks. Frank, I'm not calling about the shipment. Derek's expression twisted viciously. I need you to deal with someone for me tonight. Make sure it's done cleanly. I want him ruined and wishing he were dead. Frank's slow chuckle came through the phone. Young Master, when it comes to murder and arson, it all depends on the price. Who do you want dealt with? The president of a rival company? Or some short-sighted politician? Nothing so important. Just a low-level communications officer at Vanguard Security. A man named Lance. Derek let out a cold snort. A communications officer? Frank seemed to find it amusing. Young Master, are you joking? Using my team to deal with a communications officer would be like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Enough nonsense. That bastard will be accompanying Victoria Sterling to the industry's annual charity gala at the Waldorf Hotel tonight. A vicious gleam flashed in Derek's eyes. The grand finale of the auction is a rare sapphire necklace worth $12 million. I want you to find a way to pin the theft of the necklace firmly on him before the police arrive. Have your men give him a good welcome in the underground parking garage. I want both his legs broken. I want him crawling before Victoria like a dead dog, begging for mercy, framing him and seriously injuring him. Making a move under that level of security is extremely risky. Young Master, Frank mused for a moment. $500,000 up front. And another $1 million once it's done. I'll personally send you all the surveillance blind spots and the security shift schedules. Derek practically roared the figure. Deal. Young Master Vanderbilt. Just sit back and enjoy the show. After tonight, that kid named Lance will spend the rest of his life in the prison infirmary. Frank hung up the phone with satisfaction. Derek put down his phone, a cruel sneer curling at the corners of his mouth. He picked up the remaining glass of whiskey on the table and downed it in one gulp. Lance, you think clinging to Victoria as your backer means you can establish yourself in this city? Tonight, I'll show you that a rat from the bottom will always end up crushed to death in the sewers beneath the feet of the powerful. Meanwhile, in the VIP lounge of Vanguard Security, I was standing before a huge floor-to-ceiling mirror. In the mirror, I had changed into that deep black, bespoke haute couture suit. Its perfect cut fit every contour of my muscles, fully accentuating the sharp aura I had deliberately concealed. Even that notoriously picky old tailor couldn't help but praise me repeatedly, saying I was practically born to be a clothes hanger. Just then, the shield system's cold electronic voice rang out in my mind once again. Beep, the highest level surveillance alert. Derek Vanderbilt's encrypted call has been successfully intercepted. The call concerns a serious physical threat against you and a plan to frame you. The audio file has been extracted. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Play it. The conversation between Derek and the gangster named Frank replayed in my mind, word for word. Listening to their supposedly flawless scheme, I couldn't help looking at myself in the mirror and letting out a soft laugh. Break my legs? And frame me for stealing $12 million worth of jewelry? I casually adjusted the priceless obsidian cufflinks at my sleeves. Shield. I issued the cold command in my mind. Fully infiltrate the Waldorf Hotel's security system and take control of all surveillance equipment. Also, find the identity information of every member of Frank's team and their offshore money laundering accounts. Command confirmed. System takeover progress. 30%, 50%, 100%. The target team's accounts have been locked. Funds can be cleared and the evidence uploaded to the FBI database at any time. Leave them for now. Tonight's dinner is too boring. There should at least be someone to liven things up. I nodded in satisfaction. Just then, the door to the lounge was pushed open. Victoria walked in. She had changed out of her professional attire and into an exceptionally stunning starry sky blue evening gown with a plunging neckline. The high slit revealed glimpses of her long, flawless legs, while her formerly tied-up dark golden hair cascaded over her fair shoulders like a waterfall. Around her neck was the dazzling diamond necklace my grandfather had sent over that morning. Looking at me, transformed beyond recognition, a completely undisguised flash of amazement crossed her eyes, only to be concealed moments later by her usual queenly arrogance. She walked up to me and, with practiced ease, reached out to straighten my bow tie. That familiar, fresh cedar scent once again lingered at the tip of my nose. Not bad. You're barely qualified to stand by my side now. She raised her chin slightly, her deep blue eyes fixed directly on me. Let's go, my fiancé. There'll be plenty of jackals and tigers at tonight's banquet waiting to watch us make fools of ourselves. I looked at her self-assured appearance and, taking the initiative, reached out to wrap my arm around her slender yet powerful waist, pulling her sharply toward me. Under Victoria's slightly startled gaze, I leaned close to her ear and said in an extremely dangerous, low voice that only the two of us could hear, "Don't worry, my dear commander. Tonight, I'll make sure every beast that tries to bare its fangs won't even know how it died." 8 p.m. Midtown Manhattan, the Waldorf Hotel. New York remained vibrant and bustling beneath the night sky. A black Bentley came to a smooth stop in front of the hotel's red-carpeted entrance. The doorman respectfully opened the car door. I stepped out first, then extended my hand into the car with impeccable gentlemanly grace. Victoria placed her hand, covered by a black velvet opera glove, in my palm and stepped elegantly out of the car. Her deep V-neck, starry blue evening gown shimmered with an enchanting luster beneath the hotel's dazzling crystal lights. Combined with her tall, graceful figure and the priceless diamond necklace around her neck, her appearance instantly took the breath away from every member of the media and guest present. Dressed in a bespoke haute couture suit hastily prepared by Savile Row's finest tailor, I stood calmly beside her, thanks to the system's aegis subconscious adjustments to my muscular bearing and posture. The air I projected at that moment was anything but that of a timid, low-level wage earner. Instead, I seemed more like a person long accustomed to wielding power from a lofty position, entirely at home in this world of fame and fortune. Victoria turned her head and glanced at me with some surprise. Clearly, she had not expected that, once dressed formally, I would be able to carry off the suit so perfectly, not showing even the slightest trace of awkwardness one might expect from someone entering high society for the first time. Stay in character, fiancé. A satisfied curve touched the corner of her lips as she naturally slipped her arm through mine and murmured, New York's high society is notorious for fawning over the powerful and trampling on the weak. Don't worry, I'll never embarrass my fiancé. I chuckled softly and gently patted the back of her hand with my other hand. We entered the banquet hall side by side, immediately drawing countless scrutinizing gazes. In this circle, there were no secrets. As Vanguard Security's chief commander and the heiress of a military family, Victoria had always been the center of attention, and the gossip about her publicly humiliating the vice president at the company that morning over a low-ranking communications operator had already spread throughout New York's circle of wealthy elites through various back channels. That man is Commander Sterling's fiancé? I heard he's just an operator earning minimum wage. He is quite handsome. And he has a good bearing too. What a shame he's a kept man who climbed the ladder by relying on a woman. Sure, keep your voice down. The Vanderbilt heir is here tonight too. He's already announced that he plans to ruin that pauper's reputation tonight. Although the surrounding whispers were deliberately kept low, aegis enhanced my hearing, allowing every word to reach my ears without exception. I paid them no attention. Instead, I picked up 2 glasses of champagne, handed one to Victoria, and accompanied her as we circulated among the industry leaders, exchanging pleasantries. Time passed naturally, and the dinner had progressed to 9:15. The guests gathered in groups of 2 or 3, chatting among themselves. Just then, I noticed a waiter dressed in a white uniform carrying a delicate plate of caviar tartare, quietly making his way toward Victoria and me. Aegis alert. Target acquired. The waiter's facial features closely matched those of the master thief working under crime lord Frank. A high-density mineral reaction has been detected inside his right pocket. Hearing the system's cold notification in my mind, I narrowed my eyes. It seemed that idiot Derek's foolish plan had begun. The waiter quickened his pace, and it looked as though he was about to collide with me from the side. At this critical moment, I suddenly reached out, wrapped an arm around Victoria's slender waist, and guided her half a step to the left with remarkable agility, as if merely avoiding a portly merchant approaching with a wineglass. That seemingly careless half-step caused the waiter to miss us completely. Unable to stop himself because of his momentum, he crashed straight into Derek Vanderbilt, who had just come over to watch the show. Crash! Caviar and trays were scattered across the floor, while the waiter's entire body sprawled against Derek's bespoke suit. In the midst of his frantic flailing, both hands discreetly brushed against the pocket of Derek's suit. Are you fucking blind? You idiot? Do you know how much this outfit cost me? The impact sent Derek stumbling back 2 steps. Enraged, he kicked the waiter, who had been repeatedly apologizing, to the floor. The waiter kept his head lowered, apologizing obsequiously as he quickly got back up and soon disappeared into the crowd and around the corner of the hallway. Derek unhappily patted at the stains on his suit, shot me a vicious glare, and turned toward the restroom with a cold snort. Watching his retreating figure, a cold, mocking smile curled at the corners of my lips. The fish had already swallowed the hook. At 9:30, the highlight of the evening, the annual charity auction and showcase, officially began. The lights throughout the venue dimmed, and a spotlight shone on the high-end bulletproof glass display case in the center of the ballroom. In an impassioned tone, the host announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, the next item on display is the most valuable piece of the evening, the rare sapphire necklace, Tears of the Ocean, donated by a mysterious billionaire who wishes to remain anonymous. The opening bid is $12 million. As the bulletproof glass cover slowly rose, the black velvet tray that should have held the dazzling gemstone was completely empty. The entire venue instantly fell into deathly silence. Immediately afterward, an unbelievable chorus of gasps erupted. The security personnel promptly sealed off every exit, and the atmosphere in the banquet hall instantly dropped to freezing point. A $12 million piece of jewelry had vanished in plain sight, right under the nose of the top security company in all of America. "There's a thief! The necklace has been stolen!" someone shouted. Just as the head of security, drenched in sweat, was preparing to call the police, Derek Vanderbilt suddenly stepped out from the crowd. He straightened his collar, a supremely confident and sinister smile spreading across his face, and declared loudly, "Everyone, don't panic. I think I already know who stole the tears of the ocean." Everyone's eyes instantly turned to Derek. With extreme arrogance, he spun around and pointed straight at me, standing at the edge of the crowd. "It's him, Lance." A crazed thrill of revenge flashed in Derek's eyes. "Everyone knows he's just a low-level communications officer at Vanguard Security. He can't even afford his rent. This very morning, I issued his termination notice for negligence and gave him $2,000 in severance pay. A penniless loser driven to the brink suddenly shows up at a top-tier gala for the wealthy. What other purpose could he have besides stealing?" The crowd immediately erupted in a chorus of incredulous gasps, and countless looks filled with disdain and suspicion shot straight toward me. And that's not all. Derek was still unsatisfied and continued to fan the flames. As a senior tactical communications officer, he was perfectly capable of hacking into the exhibition platform's security system the moment the lights dimmed, creating a blind spot in the surveillance and stealing the necklace. "Shut your filthy mouth, Vanderbilt." A voice, icy beyond measure and seething with fury, suddenly rang out. Without hesitation, Victoria took a step forward and stood firmly in front of me. Her deep blue eyes seemed to blaze with an eerie azure flame, and the terrifying aura of a retired Special Forces officer erupted in full force, driving back the security personnel who had been trying to approach. "He is my fiancé. If you dare make up one more word of nonsense, I guarantee you won't make it out of this door today." Victoria's voice was not loud, but every word landed with force, exuding overwhelming dominance. As I looked at Victoria standing in front of me like a lioness protecting her cub, a warm feeling inevitably spread through my heart. Although this woman had manipulated me at first, at this moment she was actually willing to stand against all the powerful figures present for my sake. I reached out and gently took Victoria's tightly clenched fist, tenderly drawing her behind me. "It's all right, darling. Since young Master Vanderbilt is so confident, let him finish putting on his show." I gave Victoria a reassuring smile, then turned around and stared directly at Derek, my gaze as sharp as a blade. "You say I stole the necklace. Do you have any evidence?" My tone was calm, without the slightest hint of panic. "Evidence? Searching you is the best evidence." Derek laughed smugly and shouted at the security guards around him. "What are you waiting for? Strip this bastard's coat off me. The necklace must be in his pocket." The security guards exchanged glances before walking toward me reluctantly. "Wait." I raised my hand, interrupting them. I looked at Derek, the corners of my mouth curling into a teasing smile. "You can search me, but what if you don't find it on me, young Master Vanderbilt? Do you dare let them search you too?" Derek was stunned at first, then seemed to hear the funniest joke in the world. "Search me? I'm the heir to the esteemed Vanderbilt family. Would I steal something worth a mere 12 million? Fine. If you don't have it on you, I'll stand right here and let you search me today." I spread my arms and allowed the two security guards to search me thoroughly, not even sparing the inner compartments of my suit. "Report. There are no prohibited items or necklace on Mr. Lance," the security guard reported nervously. At these words, Derek's face instantly froze. He widened his eyes in disbelief. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Did you search him properly? That thing should clearly be in his right pocket." "Oh, young Master Vanderbilt seems to know exactly where the necklace should be hidden." I took a step forward, my gaze turning completely cold. "Now it's your turn." I didn't need to do anything myself to shirk responsibility. The senior security supervisor in charge of the banquet's security rushed forward and reached straight into Derek's suit's right pocket. The next second, a sapphire necklace glittering with an extraordinarily dazzling light was held high above his head by the trembling security supervisor. "Oh my God! It's the tears of the ocean. He really did steal it. The thief is crying thief." The entire room erupted in an uproar. Derek stared at the necklace that should have been in my pocket, his mind instantly going blank. His whole body collapsed to the floor like a heap of jelly, while he continued frantically muttering, "It wasn't me. This is impossible. It was that waiter. Yes, that waiter." "Are you talking about this?" I sneered, following the command I issued to Aegis in my mind. The enormous holographic projection screen in the center of the banquet hall suddenly lit up. Playing on it was the complete audio recording of Derek hiring the gangster Frank over a satellite phone at a private club. "I want you to find a way to pin the theft of the necklace squarely on him. Once it's done, I'll pay you 1 million. Derek's arrogant and vicious voice, amplified by the finest sound system, reverberated throughout the ballroom of the Waldorf Hotel. Immediately afterward, there was a resounding bang as the ballroom doors were violently thrown open. More than a dozen heavily armed FBI agents stormed in with their guns drawn. The lead agent produced an arrest warrant and looked coldly at Derek, who had collapsed on the floor. "Derek Vanderbilt, you are suspected of hiring a criminal organization, stealing valuables of significant value, and money laundering. Your accomplice, Frank, and his men have already been arrested in the underground parking garage. You have the right to remain silent. The cold handcuffs snapped shut, putting an end to Derek's ridiculous dream of marrying into a wealthy family. The farce at the dinner party came to an abrupt end when FBI agents dragged Derek away like a dead dog. The Tear of the Ocean was returned to its rightful owner, while I calmly escorted Victoria out under the awe-filled and probing gazes of countless influential guests. Sitting in the back seat of the bulletproof Maybach on the way home, the atmosphere inside the car was somewhat delicate. The neon lights of Manhattan flashed past outside, casting their glow across Victoria's flawless profile. Tonight's audio recording. And the timing of the FBI's operation, it was accurate down to the very second. Victoria suddenly turned her head, her deep blue eyes fixed intently on me as if trying to see through my soul. As Vanguard Security's senior communications specialist, your hacking skills are indeed top-notch, but being able to mobilize FBI agents to break in at precisely that moment. Lance, how much longer are you going to keep pretending to be a poor boy? I leaned back against the leather seat, breathing in the faint cedar scent clinging to her, and couldn't help laughing. Commander, weren't you the one who first dug up my grandfather's private itinerary, then sent over those photos to pressure me into marriage? And now you're investigating my background? Victoria let out a cold snort and raised her chin haughtily, but the tips of her ears had turned an almost imperceptible red. I merely wanted to test whether the sole heir to the Castle military-industrial empire was nothing more than a useless playboy. If you couldn't even handle an idiot like Derek tonight, I wouldn't mind calling off the engagement tomorrow. So, are you satisfied with the test results? I suddenly leaned forward, narrowing the distance between us. She didn't pull away. Instead, she reached out and gently lifted my chin with one finger, her tone carrying a queenly hint of teasing. You barely passed. However, the Vanderbilt family is deeply entrenched in New York's logistics industry. With Derek behind bars, his fiercely protective father certainly won't let this go. Tomorrow will be the real battle. Really? I'm looking forward to it. Seizing the opportunity, I took her hand and gently kissed it. Rarely, Victoria didn't pull her hand back. She merely rolled her eyes at me before turning to look out the window. The clock moved forward to 10 the next morning. At the headquarters of Vanguard Security, the calm didn't last long. Just as I was sitting in Victoria's commander's office, leisurely drinking pour-over coffee, the office's specially reinforced glass door was roughly pushed open. A six-something, barrel-chested old man in a well-tailored suit stormed in, accompanied by 4 or 5 sharply dressed lawyers. He was Derek's father, an old-established New York logistics magnate, Vanderbilt Senior Victoria Sterling. You vicious woman! Old Vanderbilt pointed at Victoria's nose and launched into a tirade the moment he walked through the door, abandoning even the pretense of civility. My son was merely playing a joke on this communications officer of yours. Yet you actually conspired with outsiders to set him up and have him sent to federal prison. I am formally notifying you that the Vanderbilt family will withdraw all its investments, and I will join forces with the National Security Association to blacklist Vanguard Security from all courier and transport contracts nationwide. Victoria sat behind the large desk, not even lifting her eyelids as she watched him rant coldly. Are you finished? I set down my coffee cup and stood up from the sofa. What the hell are you? A bottom-feeding parasite living off a woman. Do you think you have any right to speak here? Old Vanderbilt turned toward me like a rabid dog, his eyes filled with venom. I guarantee that the moment you walk out of this building, I'll have 100 ways to make you disappear in the slums of New York. Faced with his threat, I sighed. These so-called nouveau riches would never understand what real power looked like. Shield, connect me to my grandfather's private line, I commanded mentally. A blue light flashed in the lower right corner of my retina. I pulled my phone from my pocket, pressed the speakerphone button, and placed it on Victoria's desk. Good morning, Grandpa. There's a rat here in New York making a bit of noise, I said calmly into the phone. An old yet extraordinarily deep voice, brimming with the overwhelming authority of someone at the top, came through the phone. It belonged to the current head of the Castle family. Lance, my good grandson, you're finally willing to use the family's resources? Which reckless idiot has upset you? Old Vanderbilt was taken aback at first, then burst into scornful laughter. What are you pretending to be some big shot for? Your grandfather? Even if your grandfather were the mayor of New York City, I'd still make sure you regretted crossing me today. I ignored him and simply said a name into the phone. Vanderbilt Logistics Group. I want it gone from Wall Street's trading floor within 10 minutes. 10 minutes? You're underestimating the Castle family's financial team. 5 will be enough. Remember to bring your granddaughter-in-law home for dinner. The old man laughed heartily, then hung up. The chief lawyer standing behind old Vanderbilt was just about to step forward and sneer a few words when the business phone in his pocket suddenly began vibrating frantically, as if demanding his life. He answered the call, but less than 10 seconds later, his face turned deathly pale. He could not even hold on to the phone, which fell to the floor with a sharp clatter. Boss. The lawyer stared at old Vanderbilt, stammering as cold sweat instantly soaked through his shirt. Wall Street. 3 of Wall Street's top short-selling firms suddenly dumped our stock at the same time. The major banks have just jointly cut off our credit lines and demanded that we repay all our bridge loans within 24 hours. Our cash flow has been completely severed. What did you say? Old Vanderbilt looked as though he had been struck by lightning. He grabbed the lawyer by the collar. Impossible. That's absolutely impossible. Who did this? Just then, old Vanderbilt's own phone rang as well. Trembling, he pressed the answer button, and the desperate cries of his company's chief financial officer came from the other end. Agents from the Federal Tax Bureau had already seized their books. 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. A logistics group worth hundreds of millions of dollars vanished in an instant under the overwhelming force of capital. Old Vanderbilt's legs gave way, and he collapsed onto the thick carpet in the office. He stared at me blankly, as though I were a monster. He finally realized that he had provoked a terrifying existence far beyond anything he could ever hope to look up to. I walked over to him and looked down from above. Get out with your lawyer. From now on, don't let me hear the name Vanderbilt again. Old Vanderbilt looked as though his soul had been drained from him. With the lawyer's support, he scrambled out of the office on all fours. The room fell silent once again. I turned around and met Victoria's mesmerizing eyes. She rose, walked around the desk, and came to stand before me, the corners of her lips curving into an exquisitely beautiful, highly provocative smile. Lord Castle, let's get reacquainted. She extended her hand, her fingertips lightly tracing my chest. I'm your fiancé, Victoria. Looks like I'll really have to rely on you to support me from now on. I pulled her into my arms and leaned down to whisper in her ear. My pleasure, Ms. Sterling. However, the Castle family adheres to traditional family values. After accepting such a lavish bride price, when do you plan to come home with me to meet my grandfather? It has been a week since the Vanderbilt family's bankruptcy restructuring. On Saturday evening, the setting sun painted the waters off Long Island, New York, a shimmering gold. I personally drove a black, bulletproof SUV smoothly onto the Castle family's private estate perched on the edge of a cliff. Victoria, who had always projected the image of an ice queen, appeared unusually tense at that moment in the passenger seat. She wore an elegant, impeccably tailored ivory skirt suit, her dark golden hair carefully swept up, and rested an exquisite walnut box on her lap. It was the meeting gift she had obtained through countless military connections, a perfectly preserved sidearm that had once belonged to a legendary World War II general. Is my tie crooked? I watched her check her makeup in the rearview mirror for the 5th time, and couldn't help letting out a soft laugh. The chief commander of Vanguard Security doesn't even blink when facing a band of heavily armed thugs. Yet you're nervous about meeting the family? Victoria turned her head and shot me an exasperated look. Shut up, Lance. This isn't just about meeting your family. It's also the first real alliance between the Castle and Sterling families. I don't want your hot-tempered grandfather thinking his grandson has poor taste in women. Don't worry. The old man is absolutely delighted with you. He even had people replace the estate's entire security system with your company's products last night. I reached out with my right hand and enclosed her slightly cool hand in my palm. Besides, no one in this family would dare criticize my fiancé. The car came to a smooth stop in front of the main residence. The butler was already waiting respectfully on either side with a line of servants. We passed through the magnificent, glittering entrance hall and went straight to the family dining room, which could seat 30 people at once. At the head of the long oak dining table sat a vigorous old man with graying hair. He wore an impeccably tailored 3-piece suit and held a custom cane inlaid with black onyx. The moment his keen, hawk-like eyes saw us, they immediately brimmed with undisguised delight. This was the absolute leader of the Castle military-industrial empire, my grandfather. Old Castle. Good lad. You've been out gaining experience for 3 years, and you finally know to bring your wife home. Grandfather rose to his feet, leaning on his cane, his voice booming like a bell. Victoria immediately stepped forward and presented the wooden box with impeccable grace. Her tone was respectful but neither servile nor overbearing. Mr. Oldcastle, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Victoria Sterling. Grandfather opened the wooden box. When he saw the antique sidearm, his eyes lit up, and he burst into hearty laughter. Excellent. A girl from the Sterling family, just as expected. You understand the heart of an old soldier like me. I'll accept this gift. From now on, when you're at home, just call me Grandpa along with Lance. Just as the atmosphere was becoming convivial, a middle-aged man seated on the right side of the dining table suddenly set down his wineglass with a crisp clink. Father, aren't you celebrating a little too soon? The speaker was my cousin, Richard. He controlled several core sales channels for the Castle Group's European operations, and had long coveted the position of family heir. Richard wiped his mouth and looked at me sarcastically. Lance has spent the past 3 years working as a low-level security communications officer out in the field, so he's long since lost touch with how high society operates. Now he's suddenly returned to take over a military-industrial empire worth hundreds of billions. Those proud and hardened commanders beneath him won't accept him easily. As for Miss Sterling, he paused, a trace of disdain in his eyes. Your Sterling family does indeed have connections in the military, but in this marriage alliance, I'm afraid you're mainly interested in the wealth of the Castle family. Aren't you? If this is for the sake of an alliance, I believe Lance needs to undergo further assessment. Those words were utterly grating, and the atmosphere in the restaurant instantly dropped to freezing point. Grandpa's expression darkened at once, and just as he was about to lash out, I pressed down on the back of his hand. Shield. Retrieve Richard's secret ledgers from the past 3 years in Europe. I issued the command coldly in my mind. Infiltrating the European Union bank database. Decryption complete. System alert. Richard used shell companies 12 times to siphon off profits from Castle Group's overseas military contracts, totaling $750 million. The flow of funds has been generated as a holographic projection file, with a trump card in hand. I didn't even glance at Richard. I simply picked up the glass of red wine in front of me and gently swirled it. Before I could say anything, Victoria, seated beside me, suddenly let out a cold laugh. She pulled a thick document from her Hermes handbag and slapped it onto the plate in front of Richard. Mr. Richard, you'd better weigh your own importance before you speak. Victoria's queenly presence came fully to the fore again, her icy voice echoing throughout the restaurant. This is the Defense Department's latest 5-year weapons procurement memorandum, exclusively awarded to the Castle Group, and the person spearheading this memorandum is none other than my father. Richard's expression changed slightly, but he continued to put on a brave front. So what? This only proves that you need our group's production lines. Is that so? I set down my wineglass and tapped a few times on my phone. What if I had these transaction records showing that you laundered money through Swiss banks and embezzled $750 million from the family? Uncle Richard, take a guess. If I hand these documents over to the federal tax authorities and the family's internal affairs department, how many years do you think you'll spend in prison? The moment I finished speaking, Richard's face turned deathly pale. He stared at me in disbelief, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. How could you possibly have obtained these? These accounts are protected by multiple layers of encryption. There isn't a system in this world that Lance, can hack into. I slowly rose to my feet and looked down at him, my voice icy and cutting. Did you think I was just wasting my time at the grassroots level these past 3 years? I was simply waiting for the vermin lurking in the dark corners of the family to crawl out on their own. Butler. Yes, young master. The old butler immediately stepped forward. Strip Richard of all his positions in the group and his share of the equity dividends. Notify the security department, and turn him over to the family's internal affairs department for investigation. I delivered the verdict without mercy. 2 burly family bodyguards immediately walked in and dragged Richard, limp as a rag doll, out of the dining room as if he were a chick. The attempted power grab, which could have thrown the family into turmoil, was crushed in less than 5 minutes through Victoria's and my tacit cooperation. The entire dining room fell silent. The remaining members of the extended family were even more terrified, not daring to make a sound. Ha! Decisive and efficient, truly a member of my castle family. Grandpa burst into another hearty, exuberant laugh. His eyes were filled with undisguised admiration as he looked at Victoria. He beckoned, and the butler immediately approached carrying a tray covered in red velvet. At the center of the tray lay a dazzling ruby ring, quietly radiating an aura of weighty history. Victoria, this ring was part of Grandma Lance's dowry, and it is also the definitive symbol of the mistress of the castle family. Grandfather solemnly picked up the ring and held it out to Victoria. Today, I'm entrusting it to you. If that rascal Lance ever dares to bully you, use the family's resources to deal with him whenever you like. Victoria's usually cold eyes, which seemed to keep everyone at a distance, finally showed a flicker of emotion. She turned her head and gave me a deep look, then smiled and extended her hand, allowing Grandfather to place the ruby ring, representing supreme authority and recognition, on her finger. Thank you, Grandpa. Rest assured, with me here, no one can bully him, and he won't be able to bully me either, Victoria said softly. I took her ringed hand in mine, our fingers interlocking tightly, and the weight in my heart finally lifted completely. The family's internal troubles had been cleared away, and we had received the elder's blessing. From here on, the days ahead would be a celebration belonging to the two of us. 1 month later, on the top floor of Castle Group's headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, overlooking the bustling streets of Wall Street below, I signed the global defense merger and acquisition deal, worth a total of $100 billion, and casually tossed it onto the spacious ebony desk. Shield system prompt. Full control of Castle Group's global network has been established. Security and defense level upgraded to maximum. Hearing the familiar, icy notification in my mind, I curled my lips into a satisfied smile. In just 1 month, I had not only completely purged all of Richard's remaining loyalists from the company, but also leveraged Victoria's father's influence to secure the Defense Department's massive orders for the next decade in one fell swoop. Today, Lance, the operator who once earned minimum wage at Vanguard Security, has completely become the undisputed powerhouse of the entire American defense industry. I heard that Derek, who is now doing time in a federal maximum security prison, broke down sobbing on the spot when he saw the news of my inauguration on television and was immediately transferred to a psychiatric ward. Knock, knock. The specially reinforced bulletproof glass door was gently pushed open. Victoria walked in, wearing a custom-made pure white haute couture wedding dress, surrounded by several top stylists. Even though I had long been accustomed to her breathtaking beauty, I still couldn't help holding my breath at that moment. The wedding dress, adorned with hundreds of South African diamonds, softened her originally aloof, queenly military aura considerably while perfectly outlining her tall, slender curves. The ruby ring on the ring finger of her right hand, symbolizing her status as the family matriarch, shimmered brilliantly in the sunlight. Chairman Castle. More than 200 global media outlets and the top figures from political and business circles are already waiting in the grand ballroom. Surely you're not planning to make your bride walk down the red carpet by herself? She lifted her chin slightly, her azure eyes brimming with irresistible charm and amusement. I strode over to her and waved for the stylists to leave. How could I? I was just thinking that a month ago. You were my haughty superior, threatening to fire me. And now you're about to become my wife. I reached out and gently slipped an arm around her slender waist. Lowering my head, I leaned toward her ear and greedily breathed in the cedarwood scent at her neck. Victoria, looking at this forced marriage deal that was imposed on me, it seems I've come out far ahead. Instead of retorting coldly as she usually did, Victoria naturally raised both arms and wrapped them around my neck. She looked up into my eyes, her gaze glimmering with a tenderness and resolve that she revealed only when she was facing me. No, Lance. I'm the one who won the bet. She parted her red lips slightly, her voice trembling faintly with emotion. Whether it's the Sterling family's honor or my entire life, I'm willing to entrust it all to you. I said nothing more, abruptly tightening my arms as I lowered my head and kissed those soft lips deeply. Outside the window, dazzling sunlight pierced through the clouds and bathed New York's steel jungle. From a lowly wage earner living under a hidden identity to the absolute ruler of a trillion-dollar empire, this path of rising to the top had long since reached its peak. And in this world belonging to the strong, holding supreme power and embracing the love of my life, that was enough. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.